Hello and welcome to another Overlord lore video, and today we are going to take a look at how the new world, be them human, demi-humans or heteromorph, wages war amongst itself. And if you haven't seen the first part of this 3-part series, I recommend that you do so. And of course you will find a link to it in the description. That is, if I remember to put it there. Now, semi-true jokes aside, before we begin, I also want to thank my Patreons for supporting this channel, as well as all users of the YouTube thanks function who made one-time donations. And with that said, let's dive into the topic at hand. And the new world, with its numerous and very different species, should have a variety of wars. And while this is true, and while you can find basically any kind of conflict, from guerrilla warfare to state versus syndicate and corruption to economic warfare and an all-out war, there are, and this might surprise you, just two very different kind of armed conflicts that all of these subtypes will fall into. First and foremost, we have the species and the morally internal conflict, of which the species internal conflict of the humans is particularly interesting, because it has so many rules and procedures both sides will usually hold up. Don't get me wrong, we humans, even when we are not living in a medieval feudal society, we tend to birth groups and nation states that are capable of incredibly cruel and bloodsheddy things. And our own current situation, while not seeming that peaceful, being in actuality one of our most peaceful eras in our entire history. But nonetheless, usually, our wars have rules of engagement that are kept, especially when both sides have a very similar society and when the leaders have a very similar background and mindset. For example, in medieval and early modern Europe, you didn't kill nobles, aka the officers of an enemy army, after you have captured them. You just hold them for ransom. It's only when this agreed upon codex is broken that things will get even more ugly. And the same goes for the New World in general. Before the Empire declared its annual war, which by the way was first and foremost not an armed conflict, but a way to get the kingdom to mobilize year after year its vast reserves of peasants in order to bit by bit destroy the economy of Re-Estize. The Empire always sends an official communique, not only stating that war is declared, but also why it was declared. And after a lengthy list of grievances and reasons why war was inevitable, the Empire will also offer not only a way out of this war, but also something that would avoid any bloodshed altogether. In the last annual war, the Empire reasoned that Irantel, the king's very own fortress city, was in fact not rightfully His Majesty's property, but that of the caste of Ainz Ooal Gown, something that led the nobility of Re-Estize to scoff and assume that the Empire is really reaching the bottom of the barrel in terms of reasons for why the annual wars were justified. And Gazev Stronov, who had an idea of just how bad of a war this could be, urged His Majesty, King Ramposa III, to reconsider and to give the land to the Empire. And then of course to Ainz Ooal Gown, in order to avoid a conflict with the soon-to-be Sorcerer King. Now, while the king couldn't concede any ground, the army had a token force ready to deal with Ainz, which, as you might have already guessed, didn't quite manage to neutralize him. But at least the input was appreciated, and even after both armies stood in front of one another on the agreed-upon battleground, which by the way was done to avoid random hordes of negative energy to develop, feeding on the death and despair that had occurred, only to then permanently spew forth undead. Both sides, in a last attempt of stopping the war, will send diplomats to meet another in the midst of the open field. And again, while this was mostly a measure to save face, it nonetheless showed that the war amidst humanity itself was heavily regulated, and that saving face and the opinions of both the internal and external viewers and onlookers was important. It was a tight corset of rules, formal expectations, and diplomatic intricacies that governed this kind of conflict. And a loss of face, a breach of this conduct would incur, was oftentimes enough to uphold it. Now, while humanity is somewhat special, because the theocracy, the by far strongest nation of humans, is also looking after both parties, in order to not lose too many human lives, this is also something that happens in other societies among another. If rules of engagement are broken, then internal and external forces will, for the most part, try to sanction the breaker of the rule. And if the cultures and the species is roughly the same, there's surely some kind of set of rules of conduct both parties, who are still at war with another, will uphold at least to a degree. For example, it could be completely okay for a demi-human species to fight not only to the death, but to then eat the children of whoever party had lost the battle. But still, there might be the chance to avoid any bloodshed by both leaders agreeing to duel one another, and whoever wins gets to absorb the loser's tribe into their very own. But even in the case of total defeat and the death of all of the children, at least the women of the tribes will survive and not be eaten. Which is brutal without a doubt, but well within the rules of conduct and engagement. So no matter how brutal or soft the culture is, as long as it is shared, there are usually some kind of expectations of what the enemy is allowed to do and what is considered immoral, evil, and what will lead to internal and external punishment if these rules are broken. And with this softer side of the warfare in the New World covered, we will in the third and final part take a look at what usually happens if there are no agreed upon rules, because the cultures and species are so different from one another, that their worldviews and view of another is so different that no common ground of which rules are based upon could be found. So next time we will take a look at how a total war looks like in the New World. And with that said, I say thank you very much for watching, and special thanks to Bad Guy Yi, Ben C, Chrissy, Crowley0221, Sia, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Dystopia the Second, Feral Shivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Huster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, Chromius, Legendarius, Lelouch Britannia with a Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Merovec, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, O'Kill, Overlord General Gasper, Paddy Pantom, Per Sonich, Primus 11, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Ted, Texas Deer, The Orc Warboss, Rocket Smasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, and Zonegon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon on my next video.